But right now, actually, we're going to update something that we've been updating for a few years now. You may remember me talking to Paul Brennan about Bring Our Birds Home, and what Paul and his group are attempting to do is to get all the Air New Zealand jets, an example of all the Air New Zealand jets. And put them together in one big museum or something. Is that right, Paul?
It is. Thank you, Mitch. Good to see you again. Do you know, you were the first person in media who asked me about all this, so it's great to be here after, nearly 2 years to really update folk, because we've come a long way. But yes, 5 aircraft we're trying to recover, and they're all the last remaining examples of those fleets left in the world. All the rest have gone. So there's a certain amount of urgency to make this happen for that reason. Yeah,
we've had a lot of interest actually in what you're trying to do. How many have we got so far?
We've got 2 so far.
Yeah.
2 in the bag. I mean, we've got to write out checks yet, and we're raising money, but we've done deals with the owners.
Yeah.
The 737, ex-NAC 737, NAD was the registration of that. The 66th built, which is interesting because they've delivered over 8,000 737s now. So that was in the first 100. We were very early in as a nation on that aircraft type. And that flew the first domestic jet service in our history on the 7th of October 68, when a Viscount went US, unserviceable, and they had to fill the gap. So they put it into operation a couple of weeks before the planned first flight. So that's how that aircraft qualified for that sort of high point in history. And so we've got that in North Carolina, and we've just done a deal on that. And the DC-8 NZC in Manaus, Brazil, we have a deal on now too. Though that's a little more difficult because it's owned by a state-owned enterprise there, Infraero, which owns a lot of the airports in Brazil, and was left there after a bankruptcy, and has been encumbered in a whole group of assets that were deserted by the company. It's a very complicated, down the rabbit hole situation, and complicated.
You got money, you'll be able to get it out in a situation like that, wouldn't you?
Well, in the end,
hopefully,
they want the money. It's been sitting there derelict since 2003, accumulating parking fees. But what is really interesting about that is, since we've launched a campaign and gone social media, and that's been the big thing for us, this thing's spread out around the world. People are landing at Manaus, knowing that this aircraft's here, taking pictures of it, putting up on social media. The airport company's saying, you're making us look like a junkyard. Yeah. So that's put some more pressure on. But we're just waiting for a judge's decision, which I will get any time now, releasing that part of that group of assets from the other bunch, and they'll be allowed then to sell it directly to us. We've agreed a price. It's very reasonable. So we're just waiting for that. So we've got 2, and they were kind of the hardest ones. So we're happy about having those in the camp.
Will you be able to fly them back to New Zealand?
Not those 2. Way beyond it. But
is the idea to eventually restore them and fly them, or is it just to have a set of examples?
Well, a set of examples. Yeah. It theoretically could be done, depending on corrosion. They've been sitting out. The 737 and the DC-8 have been sitting out, and the DC-10 outside for,
We're quite good plane restorers in New Zealand, aren't we?
Yeah, but then you've got to try and get some sort of certification to fly it. And an aircraft like that is so problematic. It's not like a little warbird or something like that. You've got jet engines, you've got systems.
Okay. So it's not like getting an old World War I or World War II thing
doable,
going.
But very extensive job. But here's the thing. The DC-10 in Havana, I'm told, might still be flyable. It could be cheaper to restore it to airworthy condition for a flight than actually dismantle it and ship it. So that'll be interesting.
So the one in Havana, that's
DC-10.
That's a DC-10. So are you negotiating on that?
We're talking with, we're sort of triangulating between the ambassador from Cuba to New Zealand, who's a great guy and really helping us out. Of course, they've had recent political changes there, which has slowed things up a bit. They've had change of president, so on and so forth. And of course, the administrations that go with that sort of shuffle about as well. But also we had Steve Wild, who runs the promotions down at Queenstown, recently made a trip to Cuba. He's an aviation nut, went and filmed it and met up. Did some great work for us with the CAA head there and told him about it. So now we're talking. I'm hoping they'll be really friendly about it and not put up too much of a negotiation, because it's sitting, again, it's been sitting there for 13, 14 years, and it's just gathering dirt.
And
no value.
And you found examples of the other two?
We've got, we've got the, I've talked about the 7.3, the DC-8, the DC-10. There's an Electra, Lockheed Electra, which is the oldest one, the only one left. TEB was the registration of that aircraft delivered. That's the aircraft type that people remember brought the Beatles to New Zealand. It's famous film footage of them arriving at Wellington there. And I know it was a northerly day because, and I could probably tell the wind speed and everything because the footage just gives that away. And that aircraft is still flying in Canada, which is sort of ironic because it's the oldest one. It's a fire bomber. In fact, the emergency department of the government of Quebec spent millions on it to convert it to a firefighter. So it's still used fighting bushfires, but only has about another 5 years of life.
So you just got to wait it out.
Just got to wait that one out, but they know we want it, and they've said, look, when we're ready, we'll call you. And the last remaining 747, we've had, I think, about 14 or 15 747s in the fleets from 80 through to now. There's only one left. All the rest have been like ripped to pieces, trash. They don't exist anymore. One left, and that was the last one that they got, and that was the Frodo plane. People remember that. It was decaled up in Lord of the Rings, when that was big.
So, I mean, are other countries competing with you?
Other countries do this as a matter of course, Mitch, and that's a very good point because we're not so good at it. And we do small stuff really well, but we don't do big stuff.
We've got a funny attitude towards restoring things. I'm in a situation at the moment where I'm trying to get people to preserve something rather than just knock it down and get a new one. But it's so weird. People say new, and it's great.
Well, you go to Australia, Qantas give their aircraft as they're retiring to museums. They give them away. They fly them to the museum and say, hey, have this. We haven't been so good. And that's why we're really passionate, because these are the last ones left. Once these have gone, you know what happens with history. If the physical items aren't there, it starts to dissolve away and people forget, and it gets all sort of in the rearview mirror, and then it's gone. We don't want that to happen.
Have you got land or anything like that? Where are you planning on parking these and presenting them?
We've done a deal with the Transport and Toy Museum in Wanaka, which is right next to the Wanaka Airport. It's a fantastic location run by Jason Rhodes.
That is a good location.
They've got the land, 16 hectares, the space for the scale of it is there. They'll accommodate the 5 airframes. 1.7 million tourists through there last year. Wanaka Airport's going to be developed because Queenstown's maxing out. It's a no-brainer.
Yes.
And a great location. And they'll be there for decades, I'm hoping.
So I mean, the one that you might get in 5 years' time, I mean, how long do you think it's going to take you to complete this project?
Well, I would like, all going well, and people with big checkbooks, if you're listening, you can make it go faster, that we'll dismantle the 7.3 and the DC-8. It's not such a difficult job. Got access to the technical drawings. Basically, it's a reverse of the process of assembly.
Reverse engineering. It's deconstruction.
Deconstruction, yeah, but you've got to be careful with that, because reconstruction for a good display, you can really screw that up if you don't pull them apart properly.
Yeah,
but these have been pulled apart, and I know people around the world, and people are helping us and saying, hey, you've got to do it like this. Here's the equipment you'll need. And I think the talent exists here in New Zealand to put a team together to do that. A lot of retired engineers around. The polytechs are really heavy on engineering and STEM subjects now. This is a perfect way to introduce people to that. Even though they're old machines, they're still beautifully made, real high-end engineering. So, we'll pull them apart. But in terms of the time frame, I'd like to have those two back in here by the end of, 2018, 2019, into 2020.
The Electra, where was that? What year was that? What year was that flying for Air New Zealand?
That particular aircraft, second to arrive, was 59.
Yeah. When did they started as NAC, obviously.
No, they were Teal.
Oh, that's right, they were Teal.
Tasman Empire Airways Limited. It was owned by, I think, the British government, Aussie, Kiwis. I don't think the Canadians are in there.
Oh, so that was a joint venture between the 3 countries. So
and our bit was the Tasman.
Albert was the Tasman. And then after Teal, it was NAC.
No, it became Air New Zealand. NAC was a separate airline set up.
That was the domestic, was it?
Yeah, post-war there were a couple of private airlines, and I think it was the Labor government at the time said, okay, we can't get an air service together in a country like this without nationalising and doing it properly. They did that in 48 and took all the RNZAF C-47s, DC-3s, which were about 25 of them at the time from the RNZAF. They weren't needed after the war, put them straight into NAC along with those other airliners, you remember the old de Havilland Rapide?
Yeah.
Lockheed Electras and Lodestars that all made up the airline. So NAC went to 1978, and it was in 68 that they went to the jets, and our NAD was one of those three originally ordered.
So you're from the jets on?
From the jets on. And
the Jetsons.
the Electra qualifies because it's a turboprop engine, essentially a jet turbine engine. From the jet fleets is what we say.
All right. Okay, we've got Paul Brennan with us, obviously, from Bring Our Birds Home. If you want to ask Paul a question or make a comment or what have you, 0800 844 747. I think a lot of people are interested and remember flying in these planes. Anybody remember flying in the Electra?
I've had so many people come up to me with their little, you know how they had jet clubs for kids back, and they'll send me scans of their little, where it's been filled in with the registration of one of those planes, like NZC. They flew to Tahiti.
Well, it's so exotic and flying. I mean, now we see it as like getting on a bus, don't we?
Yeah.
But it was so wonderful flying. It was such an incredible experience. It was very sophisticated feeling, and you smoke your cigarettes and all the rest of it. Really wonderful.
Roast lamb. Those in-flight meals are just crazy. I got some amazing pictures of them.
Do they really have great meals in those days? Well, like a home cooked
food? It was like a restaurant, coming through. Great dishes of meat and, with succulent ham and everyone like, whoa, come on, hurry up, get to me. Not like now, nothing prepackaged.
Yeah. All right, it's 90 minutes after 8, 0800 844 747, back shortly.
Radio Live Night Talk with Mitch Harris. 0800 This Is Live.
22 minutes after 8 now. G'day, Dennis.
Yeah, g'day, Mitch. Paul, it's an interesting concept you've got going on. Can I ask you how you're getting the funding for it, or are you just relying on people donating, or you must have had some collateral up front to get the in?
We've done it all through crowdfunding so far, and good point, because I don't think this would have been possible before the social media and crowdfunding options were available. So that crowdfunding has been about 30K in the last 18 months, and that's allowed us to do all the work to, as I say, line up the ducks and have people overseas go and make visits and things. But right now we're talking to a whole bunch of people because we need to get some bigger money in to purchase the airframes. The good thing about what we can do here is we're not under any pressure once we buy them to have them shifted anytime quick. They've been sitting there for so long that in a few more years doesn't matter. So the real priority, the urgency, is to actually possess them, own them, get them.
Right.
So nothing can be done with them.
Okay.
But now we're talking to people who can help, and this thing's spread out overseas too. We get quite a few donations from people in other countries. So I'm looking at putting a GoFundMe page in the US because one of our planes is in the US, and we'll be doing some media over there sometime. So, by hook or by crook, you do it, but you have to have the energy and enthusiasm of the people that are following it before you can really go to that level. And now we're starting to do that.
Yeah, it's a major project. Now, when you say you're gonna ship them back, is that literally or
literally? Yeah, there's two ways of doing it. You can put them on, you can break them down and put them in containers. Don't really want to do that because then the dismantling job becomes really fiddly because you're governed by the size of containers. And some of the bigger structural pieces, you really need to think about that too, because when you're hanging engines back on them, you don't want wings to sag and things like that. Probably go on one of those gigantic roll-on, roll-off ships that you see coming in, the car carriers, but they're actually, they can take all sorts of cargoes. They've got decks that go up and down. Probably in one of those. I've had it quoted. I know how much it's going to cost. It's not mind-blowingly expensive, but it is expensive. Well, you're into the 200 or 300K.
Oh, at least
for the shipping part.
At least it's not millions.
No, it's not millions.
I would imagine too. You'd probably have no shortage of aviation engineers that would probably want to give up a bit of their time.
I've been contacted by many, and a lot of them say, "Hey, I did my apprenticeship on NZC. I dropped a spanner in there somewhere or whatever." People do, engineers particularly, but also the flight crews, right down to the flight attendants. They remember the individual aircraft really well. They really do.
Yeah.
They're very fond of them. It's a very close link. It's surprising.
One other thing, I know it's not a jet propelled, but is there any Bristol freighters left around?
I think there's one still down at Omaka that they taxi round. I've been for a flight in a Bristol freighter. What a fantastic aircraft. A lot of noise. Not much speed.
Yeah.
Not much speed. And it always used to make me laugh that the engines that powered the Bristol freighter, what was it, the Hercules engine or the Centaur? I can't remember the name of it, but they also powered the fastest fighter piston plane in the world too. So at one extreme you had, the Bristol and the other, the Sea Fury. Fantastic plane, but there is one in the country.
I
Sure.
remember seeing them on the airport of Wellington. They looked like a bulldog sitting on the runway,
Yeah, tail draggers. And, of course, they had that little cabin that I think the Kiwis made, Safe Air made, that they could slide in and turn it into a passenger cabin, and they used to fly out to the Chathams. I've been to the Chathams, but not on the Bristol. It would have been an amazing ride, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah, mate. Hey, good talking to you, man.
Thank you.
Good on you, Dennis.
Have a great night.
Because we remember the great days of aviation, don't we? I mean, it was sexy back in the day, and of course now it's just become mass transit, and it's lost something as a result of that, isn't it?
Yeah, hard to know exactly what that is because not much has changed. Mechanically, technology is hugely different, but we're not going any faster. In fact, we're going slightly slower.
Is that right?
Yeah, we're I think the DC-8 cruised at 600 miles an hour. I mean, that's fast.
Wow.
Don't think the other aircraft of today...
Because I suppose, is it all to do with fuel efficiency? Is that right?
Now it is.
Yeah, it wouldn't have mattered back then.
Yeah, and also materials, because you can make far more intricate shapes, aerodynamic shapes now with modern materials. Back then, it was metal. And,
so they had big engines to power big steel planes.
They didn't have big engines, no.
Well, how come they went so fast?
Well, they just was the nature of the design. The airliners that from that first generation came out of jet bombers. Boeing, B-52, B-47. 707 was actually a military plane before it was a civilian plane. It was a KC-135 tanker. So there was no need for economics in the military. And they're in that ballpark speed range still, but burning a lot less fuel.
So when it comes to longevity, long flights, not longevity, long flights, what is it? Is it just about how much fuel they can carry to go a long way? Or because we're getting into this business about, much longer flights now and not having to stop off and all the rest of it. So what makes a plane be able to go a long way?
Weight. So that's materials, aerodynamics.
Yeah.
How efficient is the wing? And the interesting thing now with modern aerodynamics is they're very much fashioned on nature. Airbus and Boeing will film, hawks and eagles flying on very high-speed cameras and break down what the feathers and the wing positions are doing. And they'll actually incorporate those now into the design.
Interesting, because I watch hawks a lot. I love watching hawks, and they are incredibly efficient if you look at it in the way that they glide and the way that they move, and they're really sensitive to any kind of updraft or what the wind's doing or what have you, and so there's minimal effort when it comes to flapping.
It's as efficient as nature can make it. If you look at the A350, the new Airbus airliner, we're not flying them, but Cathay come in with them, and I think a few other airlines are flying into New Zealand with the A350. If you look at the winglet, it's actually, you can tell that it's been organically derived. And if you look at the footage that they provide, you can see that it's an approximation of the 5 tip feathers of the eagle put in one fixed position to cut that drag. And, it really works. So they're using that organic sort of input now into designing the
plane design.
And its efficiency is incredible.
Yeah. If you remember back in the day of, what was it, Teal, or if you flew Teal or NAC or Air New Zealand back in the early days, give us a call and tell us about your memory. It'd be quite interesting.
How much did it cost?
How much did it cost back in the day?
I can't remember.
I know. It'd be interesting to know. What was Auckland to Wellington?
Yeah. It had to be affordable, surely.
I know, but for that full service in those days, it must...
No, but it wasn't full service, Mitch. You remember, it was just lollies and with NAC. I think it was when Ansett came here that everything went full service.
Oh, is that when you first got booze? Did Ansett bring booze to New Zealand?
Well, they bought in-flight meals and maybe bought the booze, but before that it was like, the lolly basket and maybe a biscuit on NAC.
Oh, that was it?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
I don't think the domestic aircraft had galleys at all, just, heat up the coffee.
When did we first start flying to Europe? Do you know?
Well, that was with the DC-10s.
Yeah.
They flew a service, I think, initially to LA, and then British Airways crews would fly them to Miami and on to Heathrow, and then we took them over. So that's if you wanted to fly to Europe on one of our machines, it was the DC-10s that started that. Yeah.
0800 844 747. Mike says an aviation museum for old classics is a great project, a fine collection of dinosaurs equal to Jurassic Park.
Maybe.
That's the idea, isn't it?
Yeah. I wouldn't call them dinosaurs, though.
Not jets, eh?
No, not yet. Maybe in another 50 years.
Good evening, Mitch. My dad worked for Air New Zealand for many years in Palmerston North as a loader and refueler back in the F-27 days, and he fondly talked about the Bristol freighter.
Yeah.
He said they were 10,000 rivers flying in close formation.
That's right, yeah. Rivets, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Rivets. Yeah. I thought rivets. Yeah, 10,000 rivets flying in close formation.
Yeah, that'd be about right.
Yeah. All right, 0800 844 747, 29 away from 9, back shortly. All right, here's, g'day, Mike.
Oh, g'day, Mitch. How you doing, Paul?
Hi, Mike. Yeah, good, thanks.
Oh, that's great. Hey, I just thought I'd share a bit of a history with previously what used to be in New Zealand with you.
Sure.
My grandfather came out from Germany just before the war, and so obviously he had a few problems here. And as soon as he left Soames Island,
Soames Island, right? That's where they had to stay, right?
Yep.
Internment.
Yeah.
Concentration camp, really.
Did you try the swim?
Oh, you could do whatever you want. Apparently, it was pretty nice.
It was a New Zealand style of concentration.
I meant to swim
camp.
back to the mainland.
Anyway, sorry. Go on.
Anyway, after he came back, I think within a month or so, he started his own art company because that's what he was doing in Germany and when he was on the island. So, that was his job. He was an artist and a photographer.
Mm-hmm.
And he was one of the advertising execs for NAC, I believe.
Right.
And perhaps Teal.
Yeah.
Perhaps Teal.
Well, it's a post-war, obviously.
Obviously, post-war.
But how soon? What are we talking, 50s, 60s?
A month or so after he was out.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And, so I've got all these beautiful old paintings and photos and everything like that.
They used to do great advertising because there were all those sort of like travel art posters they'd do and, of aircraft swishing through the air, things like that. Was that the sort of stuff he did?
Yeah, exactly. And so he'd take all these photos and then, he'd go and put his own spin on it and turn it into like an advertising poster. And, so that's what he did. So I've got, all this sort of stuff if you want me to send it through or something.
I'd be really interested because obviously once you get these artefacts in the place they're going to be displayed in and you start to restore them, you start to think, well, what can we put around these things?
Yeah.
We obviously want to recreate some of the cabins and use the upholstery and the wall linings. And I've actually been speaking to a guy in California who collects wall linings of aircraft. You can believe it.
Really?
There's people out there who do that. And he's got some teal and Air New Zealand 70s wall.
Yep.
So I've got the patterns, which is good because then they're easy enough to screen print onto new ones. But I absolutely be interested. But yes, that goes with displaying them is all the stuff that's connected with them, like the decor, the publicity and marketing that went with them, and of course the people. And you're talking about your granddad, right? You said.
Yes, my grandfather. He passed away now, but years ago.
So many people were involved in that. It's incredible, and many of them are still around. And it was a, one thing about earlier, Mitch. I don't know if you think about this much, but those earlier companies. Now it's all business. But back in those days, they were like families. It was like you were in a family, and you never left the family.
I was talking to JT about Fletcher's back in the day. I mean, we've seen what's happened to the Fletchers, and it's all sort of board corporate straight on that. He said his father used to work for Fletchers. They used to have the company picnic, in Walker Park and Point Chev and things. A lot of it was much different, wasn't it? Those days, companies, they really were like families.
And I think the company management wanted it to be that way. Doug Patterson, who was the head of NAC for many years, he was like their dad.
Yeah.
He was seen as a father figure, and he looked after them, and he knew them all by name.
Yeah.
Hundreds of people.
I spoke to him quite extensively about it. Before he passed away, I was quite young. But he explained, everything he sort of did. They'd fly you around and show you everything, and you do all the advertising you need to.
I guess that's one of the things you could say we've lost. I don't know if it would work these days. Probably would, because people who pull together, you know.
Oh, I think you find it in small businesses, it's still like that. But I mean, the demands for return on capital and quick return on capital.
But you can still get that.
Yeah,
Can't you?
Yeah, well, yeah,
I don't know.
Hey, listen, mate, I'll just put you on hold and give you a name and address and phone number to Attila so that Paul can follow
I'll get
up.
back to you. Thanks.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you very much, Mike. G'day, Alex.
Hey, here you go, mate.
Not bad, yourself?
Yeah, good. Yeah, no, I was just listening, and you said about the Bristol Freighter going to the Chathams, and I said, oh, you beauty, I've done that.
Oh, what was that like?
Yeah, no, it was clever, but the main thing I can remember was like when I had to fly up from Wellington and catch it from Wellington, and I always remember getting on, and they could open the front up and slide in like a container. That was like
the cabin.
Yeah, and then when it lines up with the window on the outside of the plane, and yeah, beauty, I can see the wheels. This is going to be great. When it lands, I'll be able to see a bit of smoke and stuff like that.
No smoke. I think you landed on grass there.
Yeah, mate, that was the thing. I go, this is going to be cool. I got there and I got all the way down, and we go, and you can see it. And next thing there's a barbed wire fence. And
Were you thinking when you're flying over, Alex, were you thinking, gee, I think I can swim faster than this?
Yeah, 2 engines over all that water. Whoa.
Yeah,
Don't think we'd do it these days. Not piston engines anyway.
No. And then also I did, like you said, we went to the UK years ago, and that was the same thing. Yeah, they changed over DC-10, and then they flew into Los Angeles. They changed over, same plane, but you got a British Airways crew.
That's right.
They changed the feeds and all that sort of stuff. But I can remember that trip was like, I think it was about 40 hours in the year, or 40 hours all up.
Oh, yeah, it would be. It was a long trip.
And it was but there was a cooked feed getting put in front of you about every bloody 3 hours.
Yeah, you certainly didn't starve on the way. Of course, back in those days, even a long-haul jet could only really get about 5,000 nautical miles, so there was no direct to LA. There would have been multiple, 3 or 4 stops along the way.
Yeah, we Los Angeles, Hawaii on the way, and that was my first experience of going into the States. And the old like the cattle market, the customs and guns on that.
Yeah, I know. I remember my first experience of actually, no, it might have actually been in Tahiti, but that whole thing of you first leave New Zealand. Oh, my God, these people are wearing guns.
What's all that about? I always like going through Hawaii more than LA. Now you go direct to LA. Yeah. Hawaii was almost a lot more relaxed to enter the country. And then, of course, you'd enter domestically.
LAX has got to be the worst airport to go into in the world, isn't it? It's just awful. You feel like, everybody feels like, you feel like a criminal, don't you, going in there?
Yeah. They give you the eyeball, don't they?
Yeah. All right, Alex, good on you, mate.
Thanks for your call.
Hey, thank you. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye-bye. It's 8:45 at Radio Live, 0800 844 747. Paola says, my English uncle flew the Blackburn Beverley.
Oh, the Blackburn Beverley.
To the opening of the Wellington Airport in 1958 from Singapore.
I've seen the film of it. I've seen the film of that aircraft being displayed. Of course, that was the day that the Vulcan punched its wheels into the threshold of the runway at Wellington and punched a hole in the fuel tank and nearly crashed.
Oh, did the Vulcan break the speed of sound?
I don't think so. They might have broken the sound barrier in a dive, but it wasn't designed to be supersonic. Right. But that was close because a lot of people got covered in jet fuel. I know someone got covered in jet fuel there. I wasn't around then, but and of course the Sunderland they scraped the Sunderland's hull all the way down the runway by mistake on that day as well. I think they had a few casualties.
Was that 1958? It was
59.
59.
Pretty sure, yeah.
He stopped at Rotorua Aerodrome to see my dad, who was also a POM.
Okay, well, he took the Beverley into
Rotorua? No, he was right. He was flying the Beverley from Singapore to Wellington, but stopped at Rotorua to see his dad. I have a couple of photos. Be included. Photo.
It was a huge aircraft, troop carrying aircraft. It was an old piston. It might have had the same engines as the Bristol Freighter, and a very lumbering, unwieldy thing, double deck. I don't think it lasted too long in service. But it was impressive looking. Rotorua, Crikey.
Well, you know, it's proud aviation history, Rotorua, Captain Fred Ladd and all that.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
All right, it's 13 minutes away from 9. This is Radio Live. 0800 844 747. Back shortly.
Radio Live Night Talk with Mitch Harris.
And my guest is Paul Brennan, who's he's the man behind bringing our birds home, the jets from Air New Zealand. Robin says, who operated the Sunderland flying boats? My father flew one from Sydney to Auckland. Or flew in one.
Yeah, probably that was a Sandringham because, what were the other aircraft that Teal had? The Solent, which is the example that's in MOTAT. I don't think Teal actually flew the Sunderland. That was a military maritime aircraft, so it would have been the RNZAF specifically for the Sunderland, but probably the Sandringham, which was the civil version of the Sunderland that he flew on.
When I was a little kid, NAC
had a Sunderland that they got from the military and flew to the Chathams actually. So could have been that one, but they didn't go across the Tasman with it.
When I lived as a kid in the islands and in Kiribati, or Gilbert and Ellice Islands as it was, the greatest excitement was when the Sunderland came in and landed on the lagoon.
Yeah.
You know, it would have been a Sunderland. I remember it being the Sunderland.
I think it probably would have been.
Wouldn't have been a Catalina. No.
Yeah, they had the range, but there would have been no usable capacity.
And I've got this vague memory that the air crew were French. It was a French plane.
Possible.
Yeah.
Maybe the Brits gave them some after the war or something to
it was very very big deal obviously then.
Yeah.
All right, we've got a couple of more callers here. Hi, Mark.
Yeah, g'day, mate. G'day, Paul.
G'day, Mark.
Yeah, hey, I just heard you mention about the Lodestar.
Yeah.
Now, I come from Gisborne originally. I remember they had a Lodestar there that was used for top dressing.
They did the Field Air one. I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And they actually, I would have been, I was born in 54, so, when they had the air show, I remember the Bristol Freighter and I remember the Vulcan because they actually brought those in.
Yep.
And I think it might have been the Canberra bomber as well.
Right. The electric Canberra, that's right. It was an all-electric aircraft.
Yeah, that was, it was absolutely fascinating, mate. But what I want to know, Paul, is with the Lodestar, what was that originally used for?
There was an airliner originally, I think in the late 30s in the US, and then it became, in wartime, the Lockheed Hudson, which was a maritime patrol aircraft. I think RNZAF flew quite a few of them. There is a Lodestar at the museum in Wanaka. They've got one down there. It's in pretty good shape too. And I think the airlines that predated NAC had taken delivery of a few, so they were then, when the airline was nationalised, became part of the early fleet of NAC. But originally they were a passenger plane, and they were seated about maybe 15, 19, and they got along at a good clip.
They're awesome. I used to watch it. Used to be quite fascinated by it when I was a youngster.
Yeah, I think that one at Gisborne was an ex-NAC, but Field Air took it over. Field Air also operated a DC-3 as a top dresser. I believe the only people in the world to ever do so. And
DC-3 as a top dresser?
As a top dresser, yeah.
Well, that needs a lot of fertiliser.
Well, that was a huge capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I remember, when I was in primary school, for 10 shillings, we went up in the DC-3 and we flew around a bit of the coast around Gisborne and around the city as well.
Yeah.
I can remember looking out the window and looking at the wind at the wings, and you could see all these rivets rattling away.
Yeah, formation of rivets again. Yeah, I've flown a DC-3. They're a very docile aircraft, but the sort of thing is you make a control input, and then you count 1,001, 1,002, and then something will happen.
Yeah. Hey, thanks very much for that, Paul.
All right.
Hey, and best of luck with obtaining all the other ones too, mate.
Thank you.
It's going to be great, hey?
I think it's going to be good. I think we're going to get there if we keep on pushing.
The city of Wanaka, actually down there should be some grants and stuff for that because that is going to be great tourist attraction.
We've been talking to people. It's how you put it together.
Yeah.
Because they're different.
You want to just get a bit closer to it.
Well, there's buying them. That's the cheap bit because they're junk.
It's getting them here,
getting them there, getting them displayed, and that's the bit that you need to
Cody says it's a great historical aviation museum in Ashburton with a lot of aircraft on display with some still in working order.
Yeah, they've got a 737 engine down there, I've been told. I don't know if it's got the nacelle with it. The story behind that is that I think Air New Zealand donated it to the Southland Polytech. I might have this wrong, but I'm pretty sure I got it right. And somebody not too long ago wanted to start it up. So they went to Air New Zealand and said, no, we want to start it up. Can you help us? And they said, give it back to us. They put it somewhere where it would never start up again.
Oh, is that right? Because just dangerous thing to do.
Well, yeah, if you don't know what you're doing and you don't want 15,000 pounds of thrust going nuts in front of you without knowing what to do. You know?
Oh, true. You've got a couple of engines already, though, haven't you?
We have.
You've got,
We've got two 737 engines, Pratt & Whitney engines. If people remember those 737s, I always say there are a number of distinctive sounds in aviation. There's the sound of the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine. There's the sound of the Pratt & Whitney, I forget the exact model on the DC-3, but it has a particular note. There's definitely the Bristol freighter engine. Then there's the JT8D, which is the turbofan engine that powered the 737, had a very distinctive noise about it. We've got two of those.
It's like
engines.
Harleys or something of aeroplanes.
Yeah, I reckon. To me, it sounds like power.
Yeah.
You know? Even though they're not that powerful anymore, but they got that sound. And we've got two of those. Came off a corporate jet that was retired a few years ago, and they're in storage in Mojave. And they'll bolt on NAD.
Yeah.
You know?
So, yeah. I just actually think the Pratt & Whitney and the Rolls-Royce, they're still engine makers now,
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Rolls-Royce.
Are they the leading ones? I mean, do Boeing and that still get Rolls-Royce engines and what have you?
Well, that's the problem Air New Zealand are having with the Dreamliners at the moment, the Rolls-Royce engine problems there.
Yes, yeah.
And that's why you see about 5 of them parked with no engines at Auckland at the moment. We've had a history with Rolls-Royce since Muldoon put rollers on the first 747s. Before that, it was GE on the DC-10s.
Oh, did you used to buy your plane and then pick your engines?
You could, yeah. Some aircraft come out with only one engine option. For example, the 777s that Air New Zealand fly, the long ones, they only have the GE engine option available. There are no other engines. Yeah. Pratt & Whitney has sort of made a comeback. The new Airbus that Air New Zealand took delivery of 2 weeks ago has a new type of, called a geared turbofan, which is a Pratt & Whitney engine, which is just becoming a super hit with airlines. So they're back in the mix and they're back being used in New Zealand now. So
I mean, with Rolls-Royce, the plane engine division became much bigger than the car division, didn't it?
It's huge. Yeah, it's huge.
It's very, very big. And is it? Who owns it? Does it still Rolls-Royce?
Well, I think it's still British owned.
Yeah.
Derby is where they're located, and they're big producers of engines. Of course, they nearly went bust in the jet engine business with the TriStar back in the 70s and bailed out by the government. But they've had a few problems lately, only I think because there are so many orders, so much production that needs to take place. Yes. They're incredibly complicated machines to make.
How many aircraft are flying around the world at the moment?
I don't know, it'd be tens of thousands.
Yes.
Maybe, I think it's like 40,000, the airliner fleet, and there's thousands in the air at any one time.
Other little ones as well, all the rest of it,
yeah.
Yes, and how long do you think we'll be, flying around in our personal... I mean, that thing the other day about they're developing the car plane down there. I mean, do you think kidding themselves? I sort of thought they might.
Until the first one falls out of the air?
Yes, yeah.
And what, are they going to have a ballistic chute that stops you? And then what about the person you land on? How are they going to feel?
It all sounds good, this sort of stuff, but there's actually more to it, isn't it? Like driverless cars.
I want to see it. I mean, it's theoretically possible. I mean, drones can be scaled now, and that technology is fantastic. I think the big development is going to be electric power for aircraft. That's the big thing that's coming.
Well, that's going to reduce the cost of flying enormously.
Massively. So really, in the end, you'll be making structures that are photovoltaic, and also you'll be using smaller generators to supply onboard electrical power to the power plant, and everything will come off the big fan in the engine. That's where all the horsepower will come, and it'll be so much cheaper.
It'll be freaky flying in a plane without any noise, won't it? Oh, we're going to drop into the sky by gliding.
The engines aren't working. Yeah. But that's not too far away. People are really working on that now. It's a big deal.
Well, there's that. Of course, there's that. What was it? That solar powered plane that flew around the world not long ago.
Well, that's proof of concept. It can be done.
Yes, that was what that was all about.
Just a matter of getting enough energy to fly at the speeds we're used to.
Okay, we're coming up to 9 o'clock. We'll just get Mark in. Hi, Mark.
Hi, guys. Just a very quick question. And the white vapour trails that you see over New Zealand, are they international or domestic aircraft?
It depends on, there's no distinction really. It depends on altitude and, temperature conditions up high. They'll be jet aircraft because the turboprops really don't fly high enough, but they could be anything that...
So domestic aircraft will leave the vapour trail
Domestic
just like
jets.
International?
As long as it's a jet.
Yeah, and that you're up high enough. I think anything over about 25,000 feet on up, depending on what the conditions you've got up there, will produce a contrail.
Excellent.
So they're not thanks, mate. They're not a conspiracy theory.
Chemtrail? I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, contrails are well known, aren't they? And
well, what's the difference between a contrail and a chemtrail?
It's just condensation water coming out of the hot gases coming out of the engines. I think chem is like you're spraying something from pipes and tanks in the aircraft.
So, but people confuse chem spray with con spray.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah.
Something like that. I don't know.
I don't think anyone really has to worry.
No. All right. Hey, Paul, thanks for coming in.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Good to see you again.
Yeah, and give a little .co.nz/cause/bring our birds home.
That's right. I think it's a great project and good on you.
Yeah, thanks.